Now we're talking Justice League, and I saw a visual theme, which I believe is Zack Snyder driven, even though Joss Whedon may have directed parts of these things, that I thought I would show you. And the visuals that I'm talking about, the theme, is reflection. Now, in the beginning of the movie, we see that a criminal is throwing loot outside of a building in a bag, and then he's leaving to escape, to go his way. And in the reflection of the window that he's coming out of, we see Batman in the background. And then we get to see, when the criminal turns around, he's aware now that Batman is actually watching him. Now, I found this very interesting in that the device that was used was a reflection. Why I say reflection? Because you'll find that this theme of the reflections is used only from the perspective of human beings in this movie. In this case, the robber is a human. He's not aware that Batman's watching him, who is also human. But the idea is that while the robber is escaping, we also see that Batman is watching him. I find that really, really interesting how they storytell visually. Now, this happens again in this movie a little later on, when we see the aftermath of Superman's death. And as we look at the newspaper headlines in the windows of a building, we can see images through the window. And these images we can see move. And there are two men here moving. If you look here, you'll see one, and then you'll see the other one. They're kind of looking shadowy, but in the movie you see them move, and that's how you know something's happening in the window. You can also see all of the provisions, the fruits and vegetables there in the window, depicting this scene right here. What's interesting is we see that these two men here are actually at the spot where this lady is at this point in time. As you can see here, they are accosting her, and then the police is restraining them. So we later learn that they are people who do not like that Islamic people are in the country. They're MAGA, Make American Great Again guys. Not to say that that's what Make America Great Again is about, but they're saying that this woman who is not, or doesn't seem to be, a citizen of the country at least, because she's Islamic, etc., they're accosting her and kicked her fruit down. But what I love about it is the first time we see this is hinted in the window. And it is an interaction again from the perspective of human beings watching at other human beings after we've just spoken about the death of two human beings in pop culture and then an alien who has adopted the human culture. So all of these things come from a human perspective. I find that these reflections reflect what is happening with us. What is the real scenario? In the case of Batman, if I were to just backtrack a bit, when we see the robber coming out, he's not aware of the entire scenario that Batman is watching him. And here, when we look through the window, we're seeing images of people, and we know it's foreshadowing the collision, the clash course between two gentlemen and a lady based off of religious persuasion as well as ethnic background. And I thought that was very deeply done again, showing the relationship between human beings from a human perspective. The next time we see this again is when Bruce Wayne is actually shaving in the mirror while he's talking to Alfred about his interaction with Aquaman. And he's talking about not tracking him. And it's interesting that Bruce Wayne, as he looks at himself in the mirror, he's also talking to himself as he is talking to Alfred. In fact, after he tells Alfred that he put away his coat, he mutters something to himself saying, yeah, I couldn't track him because of his coat. I couldn't track him via the coat. Which was interesting, because he's thinking and reflecting. And it's interesting that this is a reflection of Bruce Wayne we see in the mirror at the same time as he's reflecting. Again, from a human perspective, Bruce Wayne is a human. And so I find these things very interesting. We see it again when Barry Allen is going to visit his father. Barry Allen's the Flash. And we see the actual image of this man here, and then his reflection. And again, we see that this gentleman, he's trying to intimidate Barry Allen. And so it's interesting seeing the reflection of this guy as he's trying to intimidate Barry Allen. It's interesting that Make America Great Again, these guys were also trying to intimidate this Islamic woman. Batman was actually, although he was watching, he looked like an imposing figure seeking to intimidate the robber. I found all of these very intriguing. But Bruce Wayne, he was actually reflecting, which is a little bit different. And then we have some more reflections. This one, again, showing human perspective, but this time how humans relate to other humans in a non-combative manner. And so this is probably the second one after Bruce Wayne. In this case, Bruce Wayne was reflecting on himself. In this case, Barry Allen's having a conversation with his father, and if you look very carefully in the windowsill, you will see the phone and his father's hand. This is the phone here. And his father's face. You can't really see it here, but if you were looking at it in motion, you'd be able to see it much better. And on the other hand, we also see Barry Allen. He's holding the phone here. That's Barry Allen's hand there on the phone. And Barry Allen is also a reflection there as the father speaking to him. And I find this very interesting that we can see, sort of like subliminally at least, the reaction of humans to humans in dialogue. And this is not the first time that this happens. There are some other places where this happens. Again, human response, human interaction. We saw intimidation and aggression. We saw reflection. And here now, we're seeing communication and the relationship between the characters. And I think that the reflections actually help us in looking at the response of the characters to each other. Now, the other one I found very interesting was how these reflections actually help us to identify where someone is alone, solitude. Here we can see that Victor Stone, he's part of a family. He loves his mom. He's part of a community. But when we see the reflection of Victor Stone in the picture, he is an isolated figure. As the picture sort of blurs out and you see him standing there alone, sort of depicting without words his isolation, that he's alone, that he's all alone with dealing with this thing that he has now, that he doesn't know what he is, he doesn't know what he's capable of, good or bad, and he's so alone. And I find this very interesting, how it's highlighted. Again, the human condition on display with these reflections. With Lois Lane, I found this one a very subtle one. I don't know if the cameraman was thinking about that. I know Zack Snyder's a very deliberate person. Here Lois Lane is inside of the business place. She's going to Martha Kent to give her a cup of coffee. We've seen this before a number of times with Bruce and with Alfred. Now we see Lois Lane doing this to Martha Kent. And as she walks across, her shadow, or not her shadow, her reflection, is seen on the mirror in the workplace. And I found this very interesting because, again, the reflection typifies the person. It's almost like a shadow. It's a sort of intuitive. This time, Lois Lane is not aware of her shadow or her reflection. And I thought this was interesting that they're in this room inside of the newsroom, inside of a place. And this is a subtle reminder that they are not alone. And so we see Lois Lane, a solitary figure amongst the people working there. She's alone. She's kind of displaced. And then she starts to explain that. And I think pictures say so many things. A picture's worth 1,000 words, in my opinion. This one's even more awesome. This is in Russia, Soviet Russia. And this is a picture showing us the silo, and you can see the parademons pouring out of it as the little girl watches this in horror. She's somewhat afraid. And I find the human perspective again of fear. Now we see the other angle. We saw humans trying to be intimidating here. Again with Batman and the robber. Here as well. And then we see communication. We see reflection. We see isolation. And now we see again isolation. These two depict the same thing. And then here now we see fear. And this is brought to light by this is what you see in the reflection, and then this is the actual situation that's happening. Right? Sort of like what happened with Batman. And then this one's very interesting. Again, it's Cyborg. And if you look carefully, Cyborg seems to be staring off into space because he's thinking again. He's reflecting on what he's trying to problem solve the situation. And there's his reflection again, subtly. This is somewhat like what Bruce Wayne did when he was shaving. It's a subtle reminder that the person is reflecting. They're thinking. They're internally processing things. And that is exactly what you're seeing here. There's the reflection of Cyborg in the picture. I find very interesting. Here, this is again the Russian family human. Remember, Cyborg was a human being. He's not quite a human being anymore, but you see his humanity here. Here, we see the family again, but this time they're looking at the tower. Okay, and they're looking in horror. You can see their response here, the two people right here, and you can see them looking at the tower. And in reality, again, this is what is happening. I find seeing events and plus seeing people's reaction to the events simultaneously without doing multiple shots very intriguing. And then we see that the growths that are coming out of the mother box, these things that are growing and moving around, they are moving around very rapidly, and now we see the response by the human beings to this is horror on their faces. I find this so very visually concise and yet beautiful because it tells everything in just reflections. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. I find a lot of depth in this movie, as I said before, and I wanted to share it with you guys on YouTube, and how reflections literally are showing us ourselves. And so I decided to share this video with you guys. I got so much more to share with you, but we got Easter eggs galore, and we got a bunch of other things to show you, but all in time. I got this question for you guys. How does Batman, some of you know this because I put this in Facebook social media, and some of you have seen it on Twitter. How is Batman related to Star Wars? And the other one that I did and I put up online, if I can remember, I can't remember it right now, but how is Batman related to Star Wars? That's my question for you guys. Oh, I think I had to pull this one down because it was flagged. When Aquaman spilled the beans and confessed, on the Lasso of Truth, how he liked Diana, or he found her very attractive, this was not the first time that was done. I don't know if I did a video on this and it was pulled down or not. I may have put this in social media. I'm not too sure where I put it. But at the end of the day, I thought that would be interesting also for you guys to go check out Aquaman's, that's an Easter egg, Aquaman's relation to Diana in the comics and in animated movies. And you can check out Justice League War for how his relationship with Diana was. You can also look at certain comics like Aquaman Annual #1 back in 1998, I believe. And you can also look at Aquaman, what was it, a Justice League comic? I think it's JLA. I can't remember what issue. Okay, where Aquaman actually, he gets caught in the lasso of truth and he starts confessing how he's attracted to Diana and stuff like that. It's very interesting. Anyway, guys, I got a ton more stuff with Justice League for you, so stay tuned. Don't forget, share your enthusiasm about this movie. Go up and enjoy yourself sharing your enthusiasm. You guys have a great one.